Hey everyone, happy weekend. I just wanted to take you through real quick the example app that I built to show basically what a knowledge layer can look like and what that can mean and why it's important. What adaptive learning could look like, what better semantic search can look like, interactivity between the site. And so again, the big thing I realized that we talked to everybody over the last few weeks, is that the biggest thing we need to understand, and I think was really important to show, and the decision we need to make is: do we want to spend time, effort, money, and create a knowledge layer over our database, over our information, over the library that is GuildSomm? Because that knowledge layer is what allows for APIs, adaptive learning, better semantic search, AI tutoring, all those type of things to exist in a way that is trusted and we can actually govern ourselves, versus letting AI kind of just do all the work for you. So, of course, I used AI to build this. This is not real or online. You can see I have a local host up here, meaning I'm hosting it only on my computer. But again, I just kind of wanted to show you what's possible here, right? So one of the big things, again, I kind of called it GuildSomm OS operating system. I think it's just kind of fun. But the website that we have really should be more personalized, right? We should have, welcome back, Mark. Making sure, hey, you're still studying for your CMS Advanced. Here's your progress towards whatever you're working on and what they've told us that they want to work on. Some recommended next things to do, things that are new, continue to learn, etc. One of the things we all know that has been not very fun with our current site is its ability to search anything and get the information you need. So I just wanted to show you, once you've created the knowledge layer, the knowledge base, search becomes pretty incredible. You can just basically ask it anything. So if you were to ask what are the grapes in CDP, right? If you were to ask our current site that, everybody knows that's not going to go very well. You're going to get these, whatever shows up, maybe chatting off to pop, 15,000 tags, you figure it out from there. But if you ask this kind of site, right, you actually get an answer. Appellation permitted grapes, here they are. How do you know it's real? Well, I'll take you quickly to the Shut Enough to Pop AOP page. This is where that information came from, right? I did not do a ton of UI or user interface kind of work here. I wanted to make it look as similar to GuildSomm as possible while making it work a lot better. So kind of going back to the compendium, right? This is the base of our knowledge layer, right? These are facts. So again, you can pop around, understand kind of where you want to be, right? And then you're like, hey, if you're just studying, you're making your note cards or whatever, and you're like, I really wish I understood a little bit more context around that. Great, you can pop over to the expert guide, and it brings you directly to the place in the expert guide where the information is, not having to go back out, search for the expert guide, search through the expert guide yourself, and trying to figure out the information. And then, when you have the study guide of the Rhône Valley versus the expert guide of the Rhône Valley, right? Like, how can they connect? How can they be better? This is the actual, study guide itself. But now, because everything is linked in knowledge, you can have way easier search functionality within the guide itself. You're like, hey, I just really want to pop down to Conjuru. No problem. Here you are. And then when you're reading about it, if there is expert context around it, again, instead of, you're like, hey, this is great, I read this one paragraph, but I really want to understand a little bit more. No problem, the expert context is here. And again, it brings you directly to the place within the expert guide that exists. And you're like, you know what, I want to go even a little deeper. And that is where, again, the compendium record really comes in. So there is some of that functionality we have on our site now, but when it comes to like truly linking it all the way through our sources, that doesn't really happen so far. So again, way better semantic search, understanding of things in the code, right? So you can ask the librarian kind of anything. Have started to love the term librarian because I feel like that's what this really is, right? We have an amazing library of data, of information, and instead of when you're asking the librarian, like, right, to find the right information for you, I think it works really well. So I also wanted to show you what happens when it doesn't know something. So again, I only have the Rhône Valley in here, so there's nothing about Pinot Noir, basically. So if I say, hey, tell me about Pinot Noir, you know what? I can only answer from the GuildSomm Knowledge Library, so rather than guess, here are some suggestions of where to look for the answer to your question. And again, I think that trust, like, how do we know it's not going to lie to you? This is how you do that, where it's explicitly written in the code. If you don't know the answer, because it's not actually linked in knowledge, you should not answer the question. And that's how we know, again, there won't be any hallucination down the road for this, because it is actually hard-coded into the site. So a lot of this, like, feels very AI, but it's actually mostly just hard code. So again, kind of back into the adaptive space, right? Like, what does that look like, right? And so if I pop over here to my Learn page, right? Confirm your study plan. Like, what are you working for? Are you working for WSET, MW, CMS? Are you a distributor, restaurant, whatever? For me, I'm going to stay here. I'm studying for my MS exam, and I want to take it in a year. And here are some things that I want to focus on. Again, this is purely example, and there's not a whole lot behind this other than just to show, like, hey, this is what one of these pages could look like. One of the things that Jason and I've talked about for a long time is, understanding what to study, and then more importantly, like, knowing what not to study as you're going through the exam. So this is where, if Jenny and team, build true learning paths for all these type of things, this can be really, really powerful, especially for new users and new members coming out of the platform. So, hey, you're a CMS master candidate, you're 58%, confidence level in where you're at. Here's what you need to review. Here's some of your strengths, weak areas. This can be as customized as you want, and obviously this is just, again, an example, but really giving our members, like, hey, this like shows without much work that, hey, we care about where you're at in your journey, and we're going to help you get to the next level. So within that, right, how would we, again, kind of track some of that stuff? And the easiest place to start is quizzing. One of the things, as you guys probably just saw, we've talked a lot about is the CMS style of questions versus WSET style of questions. They are different, but the knowledge beyond them or behind them is the same. And so once you have the knowledge layer built, right, doing a style of question is a very easy thing to do. I only have 30 questions built because it just did for the Rhône, just to show, again, the example. So to show you, like, what a style difference would be, right? The CMS style of this question: which wind heavily impacts the Rhône Valley? Let me scroll. And then if I wanted to make that the WSET style, which wind is a defining climatic feature of the whole Rhône Valley? To give you an idea, when I put the 30 questions in originally, and I said, hey, I want you to make a CMS style, which is basically what they are now, and then a WSET style as well. That entire process, the knowledge engine took 15 seconds to figure out, to do the code and build this little feature here. So once the hard part's done, the knowledge layer is built, all the functionality becomes way simpler. So again, in classic mode, you have your beginner, intermediate, expert. One of the things that is tough for me, and I've always really wanted, is like, hey, when I get a question wrong, like, why did I get it wrong, and where's the information to find the answer, not just what is the answer itself. So again, if you get the question right, great, it tells you got the question right, no problem. But if you get the question wrong, here's the answer, and here's why it's the answer. And if you don't believe me, you can read about it in the expert guide. It takes you, again, to the direct place in the guide that explains it in detail, in context. Super, super rad. And then, again, wanted to show a little bit more of the adaptive part, right? And this is very, very basic adaptive, but, like, to show what that could look like, let's put it into mentor mode, in which case, again, we're going to start. Imagine our entire question bank here. You could literally spend 20 minutes, you could spend 3 hours, you could do really whatever you want, and continue to quiz yourself, learn, in a much more user-friendly format. So again, I'm just going to get these 2 questions right. So once you get 2 questions right in a row, you can pop up to the next level, intermediate questions. You got 2 of 2 correct. That's awesome. What happens when you get them wrong? So here is, I'm going to get this question wrong, and I'm going to get the next question right. And hey, you got 50% correct, but we're going to, stay here at the intermediate level for 2 more questions. So if you get 2 questions right, you can move up. If you get a question right and a question wrong, you stay where you're at. If you get 2 questions wrong, you go backwards. And again, that's the very basics of kind of adaptive, but you can imagine once we have the entire site compiled into an incredible knowledge layer, knowledge graph, right? We can recommend like, hey, you should spend a little bit more time in viticulture to understand these basic concepts before going back into whatever expert level of co-roti or whatever that may be. So again, just really wanted to show what this could all look like. So talked about kind of why we would do this, but let's look at how it would work, how we know it's not going to lie to us. So the way I kind of built this knowledge engine is that, and this is just, again, purely example, although it does actually work. This is the verbatim copied out of our compendium for Shed Enough to Pop. And then the knowledge engine basically extracts the facts from it. And now you can see it extracted 54 facts. This is fantastic. You can read it exactly where it came from. Fantastic. Okay, well, what about if it gets it wrong, right? What do we do then? So, of course, right, we still want to have editorial governance over the data, over the knowledge. And this is what an example of that user experience could kind of look like, right? So say that we compile the entire site and then just new content comes up. We need to create that content into knowledge. We go through that little process, and then it goes into a kind of editorial review here. So let's pop down to Shed Enough to Pop. And, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of facts, right, that turn into knowledge. So you don't want to have to do that literally click by click every single time. So we can set a confidence score threshold saying, hey, if it's over 80% confidence, and the more and more you do it, the better and better it gets, the more the engine understands. Then you can just say, hey, yeah, I'm going to quickly scroll through this. Yes, that's fantastic. Let's confirm all 81. But also down here, hey, there's some information that was in the expert guide or the study guide. I really want you to understand because it only hit a 70% confidence score. So you can approve it, you can edit it and reapprove it, verify it, you can disapprove it, you can remove it altogether. And so again, this is just to show like governance, trust. That entire layer has to be intact because that is our entire ethos, right? And I just wanted to put some kind of user experience around what that could look like for our team on the back end. So I've talked a lot about knowledge graphs, so let's just talk about exactly what a knowledge graph is, right? Again, it's one connected structure, and every fact is traceable to a source. So to put it into a visual, this is what that looks like, right? The compendium is the baseline of the facts. Shed Enough to Pop is located in the southern Rhône. It permits Grenache. It's grown on clay. It permits Syrah. It has a climate that's Mediterranean. It permits Mourvedre. It makes red wine. Now, obviously, this is a very small subset of facts around Shed Enough to Pop, but you can imagine basically this knowledge tree that just explodes and expands and becomes our entire site. And again, all these functionalities that I just showed you all of a sudden become possible, and they're really easy to build once this is in place. So again, adaptive learning, intelligent search, an AI tutor, APIs and integrations, being able to have my company software or restaurant ABC software, their inventory system ping the database to understand more than when they have a bottle of wine, Chateau Lenert from Shed Enough to Pop, and the sommelier wants to just double check on some of the facts without leaving their app. It could ping our database, and because all of this exists in actual factual knowledge, it will not lie to them, and it's powered by GuildSomm. So again, you can really take this, you can run with it. There's a lot of opportunities, but again, the one thing we need to decide this coming week is, do we want to take the time to convert the site to a knowledge graph and then basically merge it together with what we have now, still hosted on Verint most likely, still working with 4 Roads, but basically building this knowledge engine on the side so that any new content that comes in, we can just have the site continue to learn and get better and more intelligent over time, so that we can continually maximize the member experience for anyone that signs up for the site. So that's it. I didn't want to take too much of your time, but I do really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch it now, so we're not spending 20 minutes of me doing this in the meeting itself. Please feel free to shoot me any questions over the next few days, thoughts, concerns, tell me why it's a terrible idea. I'm all ears. And again, we can kind of just jump into information, talking about it, ideas, questions, when we get to it on Wednesday. So hope everyone had a great weekend, or is having a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.